Hi, I'm gonna do this last video on Plato's aesthetics. These little aesthetics and things are not gonna be that long as my other ones because there's something to discuss about them, but there's not that much. There's not a whole lot that I can get into because there's a lot. But I'm not gonna be able to discuss for hours on this stuff because I'm just kind of just getting my feet wet here. I'm not getting my feet wet just now in Platonic. In Plato's dialogues. I've read lots of Plato's dialogues, but I've never really read these dialogues with respect to what he's saying about art and beauty. But here in this one, I'm gonna discuss the idea of imitation or mimesis. And mimesis, that word was essentially a Greek word meaning copying or imitation, but right now it's really a English word now because it's been made a word for that for kind of the same thing. And there's also divisions upon there's actually divisions upon of that imitation and mimesis mean different things, but that's totally different. This whole idea about imitation is the question about what the artist is doing. Is the artist can be either just imitating something, and imitating something here is making a copy of a form. Or forms, because if an artist paints a mountainscape where he's basically copying forms, one form of beauty and the forms of others too. Because the mountains itself, the mountains that he's painting are copies of forms like beauty and stuff like that itself. But then we have him copying that, and that's a copy of a copy of those things. But then also we have the question of, is the artist doing this by divine inspiration, just like Ion is doing his little poetry and reciting Homeric epics by divine inspiration? And then also, is this skilled knowledge? Is art a form of skilled knowledge? So there's this. Is the artist able to, in this little imitation thing? Is he always imitating something, for one thing? And when he is he able to actually portray the form of beauty by making a copy of forms? Is he able to portray that form of the form of beauty? And if so, is he doing this by divine inspiration or skilled knowledge, or what? And essentially, what most art is. Most art, lots of art is, because we have painting of, what is already here on Earth, for one thing. Now I'm thinking about Hegel here. Hegel has a different differentiation of what beautiful things are. What art is. The first one is something that is a piece of art that just makes you basically be so what's the word? Shocked, I guess, by how beautiful something that they have seen is. This is a standard for one kind of beauty. Another one is being shocked and struck to the ground by how messed up or confusing a piece of art is. Third is being so shocked by beauty based upon how well this piece of art imitates something that is already here. So first of all, I think that it should be acknowledged that it is not even maybe half of all art, but maybe not even half of art is 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 imitation. I don't think that you know. Yeah, I might say that it's half of all art that is imitation, but I guess I would say maybe a quarter of all art is actually imitating something. Maybe a quarter to a half of all art that is made by artists, whether skilled or divinely inspired, are those either 25% to half are imitating something, imitating something that is here already. But then I would say that the other percentage of people who do art based upon skilled knowledge or divine inspiration do so by source of something that they see in their head or something that they imagine up. Now that's something different. Like, for instance, like if you looked at, and there's I guess that the whole dividing line between this is hard because you often don't know what the artist is doing. But you have to realize that not all of art is a imitation of something. Hegel acknowledges by having three categories of the standards of beauty rather than one category. So I don't think I think that you might for one thing you also might not always know if the artist is copying something or if he's doing something completely that was an offshoot of something that he saw in his head or something that just happened on paper and is like, I don't know how I did that. Now that is where you might think about, well, he was divinely inspired because of this. Now that's a totally different issue. But the whole question here is how much of art really is imitation. And that's really hard to say. And I would go with the 25 to 50% amount, because for one thing, you don't really know at all the time. But then you have to also acknowledge that there are artists who make art that is not imitating something at all, but rather creating something new. Which is why I like Hegel's standards as well as Kant's, but I like Hegel's standards because they have opened two more categories for things that are not, imitating. And I would say that. And then another question about this imitation is art that has been established as imitating, is that kind of art should be considered art at all? And I would say yes, that it should be. It should be totally considered as art, because for one thing, in Hegel's standards, is that something is more in the standard of imitating nature or imitating something else. If it's in that standard category, then it's range about how beautiful it is based upon how well it matches up to the real thing. And that, I think, is a huge source of beauty, and that, I think, is a real way that we can explain why a certain sculpture or painting is beautiful, because it matches up that close to the real thing, or as Plato say, how close it matches up to the copy of the form or forms. Now that there, I find to be really interesting, and I don't think that imitation should be tossed out as art, because I honestly think that the artist also is most of the time usually going to be skilled in his craft at some point. Because I think it might start as divine or inspiration. It might start out that way, but it's probably going to be led towards being skilled in the craft at some point. And that I find to be pretty, interesting. And I find that regardless of where a artist is at in his career, what he makes can and should be able to be thought of as art and be beautiful if it comes up to the standards of whichever philosopher one may choose. But then I honestly think that we should, of course, never ever toss out the idea of imitation as art, because imitation is art. The idea of how close imitation comes to the real thing, of the real form, as Plato would say, that is art in itself. Or if you want to say, as Hegel would say, if the more closer you come to imitating nature, that is how beautiful it is. And I guess that little idea there, to me, is proven, because if you see a picture of the Niagara Falls, and it's sort of mixed with the artist's own take on things, it's going to be less beautiful based upon imitation. But it might be more beautiful based upon other standards, but it will be less beautiful based upon imitation. But then let's say we have another artist who paints the Niagara Falls, but he paints it down to the damn detail, and paints all the water, just as if it was water on the paper, and paints everything in every splash of water as if it was on the paper, paints the clouds as if they were on the paper. Now that if you've ever seen anything like that copies something that you know about, you will find that to be beautiful. I guarantee that. Therefore, I think that it's sensible that imitation should not be tossed out as art. But I guess, and I think now, nobody would ever really do that, because I would say that a lot of art is imitation, and if you take that out as what can be beautiful, then you're taking out, possibilities of how beautiful something could be.